So it's going to be it's a scaling in kind of question here. All right, so he's got two order sets. Great, yeah, he's got a stop loss with that he wants to set at the swing, at the previous swing point, and yeah, as a backup, we'll set a 20 tick stop in case there is no swing point. Yeah, so I guess really the kind of unique part about this question would be setting up the second order set or the second contract and order set to enter on a pullback. Let's see. So I'm suggesting, or I'm assuming that you have a BloodHound signal that would be detecting your price pullback to the 50 EMA there. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's get started here. And now let's get BlackBird back on the chart and we can start building. Let's get BlackBird open here. And I'll start by loading the BloodHound signal. Definitely is not going to be in my quick list here. So and there it is, April 13th. All right. And there we go. Click OK. Actually, let me point out here something that, I always used to say this about Raven, but so I should say the same thing with BlackBird. So it's always a good idea to take a little peek at your BloodHound logic and just make sure everything looks like it's connected up correctly. So, right. Like for example, I see there's a bar direction that's not connected. I'm not sure why. So I don't know if I see something weird about the signal, the BloodHound signal. It could be because this one solver was left unconnected. This was done more than a year ago, so I don't remember why this one solver was disconnected or not. But the point being, take a quick look at your BloodHound logic. Make sure it looks like everything's connected correctly. If you see something like this, just make a mental note. So that way, if your BloodHound signals look a little off, well, it could be because this guy was accidentally left disconnected, for some reason. So, all right. So, all right. So there you go. Make a mental note. I might need to connect this in if my BloodHound signals look a little fishy here, but I'll leave it the way it is for now. So click OK. There we go. All right, so I have the BloodHound signals loaded. And before I go too far, let me just neutralize the trend here. Market really kind of took off there. Okay, now let's get back to building here. All right, so let me read the question here. All right, so it doesn't look like it matters what the entry order type is. So I'll just keep it simple and we'll just say, let's just make it a market entry. And let's see, okay, so the stop loss, we want that to be, well, I guess let's make it interesting. We'll make the stop loss the swing high low and a trailing swing point. So a trailing swing point there. All right, and as a backup, so depending, a swing point can't always be used for a stop loss. So let me show why here. Actually, and hold on, let me get the indicator settings being used here. All right, so 2 and 2, and we're using the tightest swing point or plots there. Okay, so let me cancel that, and let's get that indicator on the chart here, right? That's detecting the swing points. Okay, so that's the indicator that BlackBird is using and BloodHound uses for detecting swing points. And let's change my indicator settings here. So we're using 2 and 2. And actually, BlackBird was set up to use the two tightest plots here, not the widest plots. All right, so all I'm doing is I'm just showing the plots on the chart that BlackBird is using here. Let's see, bottoms. All right, perfect. Okay, so there's the swing indicator. Now let's take a look right here. So the red dots are the swing lows, right? So if you're going to be taking a long trade, right, and you're using swing points for your stop loss, then your long trade, the stop loss is set at swing lows, right? Well, what happens if price breaks that swing low? Well, you don't have a swing low to put your stop loss at yet, right? So that's kind of the problem. One of the things to be aware of when you're using indicators to set your stop loss, right? We actually don't have a swing low, not yet. We have to wait an extra bar. So it's not until this bar that we then actually have a swing low right there. Right, so it usually takes indicators a couple of bars before the indicator actually detects something. So and especially in the case of swing points. So one way to kind of alleviate this or to mitigate this potential problem. And of course it all depends on your trading system and your trading style. Maybe that swing point's always going to be there, so it may not be a problem. But if it is, what we can do is, instead of our initial placement being at the swing points, we could just set a simple stop loss here. So we'll set our initial placement of the stop loss at just a simple 20 tick stop loss like that. And actually, let's put that backwards. There we go. We want a negative number for stop losses. All right. So it creates just a simple 20 tick stop loss. But what will happen is that the trailing roll here, so we have a trailing roll that will move that stop loss. It'll snap that stop loss to the swing point as soon as there is a swing point. Right? So, and let's take a look at the swing point indicator settings here. And so we're using 2 and 2 for the indicator settings, and we're using the tightest swing points here. Right, so that matches the indicator that I have on the chart. So, okay, so for example, in this case here, if we took a trade, if the trade was initiated on this bar, let's see, where would the stop loss go here? Our stop loss would be placed approximately down here, about 20 ticks. It depends. Let's say we got in at $70.90. Let's say our orders placed up here around $71 even. So then the stop loss, right, is 20 ticks below. Down here at 70.80, and then a bar goes by, right? There's no swing low yet, and then here we go. Finally, now this bar goes by, and that trailing rule for BlackBird would then pull our stop loss and snap it up to that swing low as soon as the indicator plots it, right? So, all right, so let's open up the order set here. There. So that's how this stop loss setting would work here, right? So the initial placement is just a simple fixed tick offset there, and then the trailing roll will snap that stop loss up to the to the swing point as soon as it's there. So now, of course, if a long trade was taken, on this bar here, well, the stop loss, you would see the stop loss. Well, maybe it depends on how fast your Ninja Trader's running here, but you might see the stop loss show up right down here, 20 ticks lower. Well, probably more like around here, 20 ticks lower, and then the stop loss would snap up instantly, within a split second there. So, all right. Anyways, so we have our stop loss set up, which isn't really the key part of the question here, but just something good to learn when you're using indicators for your stop losses. All right, and then so let's see, what's the next part here? So the profit target, first profit target, looks like it's going to be 14 ticks. All right, so we'll just use this 10 tick one, and then go to the options tab and go to the initial placement there for our profit target, and we'll just bump that up to 14 ticks. There we go. Okay, so the first order set's done for us. Now the second order set, right, that's going to be our scale in contract, and that's what this question's really all about here. So let's start off by just make a copy of order set A. There we go. So our stop loss is all set up for us, right? Really simple. Now the profit target for the scale-in contract here is going to be 20 ticks. So we'll just knock that up to 20 ticks. And now here's really what the question's really about, is how do we set order set B, all right, our second contract, how do we set that up as a scale-in contract? So, and that is what the placement triggers are for here. So we are using BloodHound signals here to detect our little moving average bounce. So, and we have a BloodHound signal set up here already. So if we want this second order set or second contract to scale in on the second signal here, and actually let me find some signals to talk about. There we go. All right, so there's two signals right there I can work with. All right, so order set A, right? Order set A here, it would go in on the first short signal, and then order set B, we're going to set this to go in on the second BloodHound signal. All right, so that's what these placement delay and placement trigger is for. So these two components sets up the scale-in conditions, the scale-in logic or the scale-in conditions, however you want to call it here. So we're going to use our placement trigger. So what's the condition that's going to trigger this order set B to go in? And you'll notice that these are all trigger conditions, right, which are the same. So if you go to your stop loss trailing rules, right, you notice the trigger on conditions here. So it's the same triggers that are used in your stop loss trailing rules. Those same triggers are what's used here in the placement trigger. And what we want is to make things simple. I mean, there's two ways we could do this. You could use a BloodHound. You could set up a BloodHound signal. But let's see. Actually, no, you couldn't use the BloodHound signal. Not in this case. You would actually, yeah, you would have to use the trade signal trigger. So if I use the BloodHound signal trigger, contract B would go in on the first BloodHound signal. Right, there's no option here to say, wait for the second BloodHound signal. So that's why we have the trade signal trigger. And this has a counting mechanism, right? And so the trade signal trigger is specifically set up so that it ignores the first BloodHound signal. Well, not BloodHound signal, but whatever your trade signals are up top here, right? So everything you put up here, these are trade signals, right? So if you're using an indicator, and maybe your third-party custom indicator also might give you 2 signals in a row, so so if you're using a custom indicator, well, that also would be considered your trade signal. So, so using this trade signal trigger, looks at whatever your trade signal indicators are. Doesn't matter if it's BloodHound or some custom indicator. What it does is it will ignore the first trade signal and then looks for any additional signals after the first one here. So if you read the title there, it says signals after first entry, right? So this first short signal would be the first entry. And so we want to go in one signal after that first entry. So this 1 is the first signal after the first entry. And if we set this to 2, well, then it would wait for basically what would be the third trade signal, right? So the first signal is like the first entry. Second signal is that's the first scale in. And if we had another short signal, right, that would be our second scale in. So what this is really counting are the scale in signals. So, and we want to use the, there we go, first scale in signal there. So, all right, and that's it. That's all that's needed, just like that. So let's go give this a shot here. And let's see, 14 ticks. Okay, just, let's see, on a 5 range bar. Yeah, just for safety, just to make sure that this plays out, I'm going to make this one a 20 tick profit target as well, just to give me a safe enough distance, to get the second bounce here. And then I'll set this profit target back to 14 ticks before I save the file. Actually, let me save it now. Actually, I don't need to save it there. I can just hit the save and close button. All right, let's give this a name here. It's the 11th. All right, so we have a BloodHound EMA bounce signal there. And let's see, our stop loss is 20 tick, trails the swing points. All right, something like that, I guess is good enough for a file name. Okay, and let's turn the auto trader on there. And okay, yeah, let me see if I can make a couple of bounce trades off of this EMA. And actually, before I get started here, so I do have BloodHound on the chart, but it's BloodHound the indicator, right? If I want to see BloodHound coming from BlackBird, I will need to reload my chart, and there we go. Now we have 2 BloodHounds, so I can remove the BloodHound as the indicator and just use BloodHound that's running inside of BlackBird here. And let's set up there we go. Set up the right signals there. Oh, and turn the auto trader back on. There we go. All right, let's generate this pullback. Shoot, no, didn't get a signal there. Let's try this again. Let's see here. Okay, I think I need at least a 2-bar pullback to the moving average. Yeah, it looks like it requires at least 2-bar pullback. Okay. So let me well, let me switch it to a downtrend. All right, so I'm just going to give this a couple of bars to pull away from that moving average, right? Because I need at least a 2-bar pullback to get a signal. Okay, I think this is going to do it here. All right, bingo. There's the first order. Great. So let's. We just need to let the market move away. And look, there's our stop loss. It's snapped to that swing point there. This new swing point that was made. All right, so now let me make another pullback. Okay, great. There we go. We got a two-bar pullback. So this bar, we should get another short signal here, I think. Bingo. And there went our scale-in contract. All right. And let's see here. I don't want this to get hit. I'm going to generate a third short signal here. And look, our stop loss is there, snapped to that swing point there. All right, so I'm going to generate 2 more pullback bars there. All right, third signal, and of course, nothing happens, right, as expected. So there's not a secondary scale in there. So, all right, so there we have it. So again, the key to this question, or the goal of this question, was, about setting up scale-in contracts. And so you have all of these triggering conditions here to help you, create whatever that scale-in condition is. And so in our case, since we had BloodHound signals like so, right, we just used the trade signal trigger to do that. Right. And actually before, let me neutralize the market there so it doesn't get carried away. Okay. And just remember, the trade signal trigger starts counting after the first signal. So it's specifically designed, for scale-in contracts here. All right, I'll wrap it up. So guys, just a reminder, email your questions in, please. That's what these workshops are for your guys' questions. So there's no question too small or too big. I'm here to address them all. So, all right, guys, with that, hey, have a good weekend, and I hope to see you guys next week. All right, bye-bye.